I want to thank the Museum of the City of New York for doing this. It's one of my favorite museums in the City of New York. And if you want to know why, just check out New York New Music 1980 to 1986. It is a terrific exhibition. There's a lot of overlap with this film. As she said, my name is Matthew Rettenmund. I actually have to admit I came to this film only because of Madonna originally. I was 15, so I can be excused. But I want you to understand that even though I have this huge collection of Madonna stuff and I've written books about Madonna, you don't have to care about Madonna to love this movie. It is not, as it was once marketed, the Madonna movie. It's a fully formed film with so many different layers to appreciate, above and beyond Madonna, who is sterling in it. I mean, I can't say enough good things about how good she is in it. In order to talk about some of the things I think are most important about the film, I have to mansplain feminism a little bit to you for a moment. This is a girl power film. It was written by a woman, Leora Barish. It was produced by two women, Sarah Pillsbury and Midge Sanford, directed by Susan Seidelman. It even had a female studio executive at Orion, Barbara Boyle, who was ushering it through the system. This is all unprecedented. And then even more seismically, it had two women as the stars, Madonna and Rosanna Arquette. Not necessarily in that order. And it had a great kind of a woman point of view plot to it. It's about a young yuppie housewife from New Jersey, Rosanna Arquette, who becomes sort of fascinated with this downtown denizen, which is Madonna, Susan, and she kind of follows her through the personal ads. I always thought it was a little voyeuristic. I always saw it as a sort of a Hitchcock thing. There's actually a Hitchcock clip in this movie. But when I was interviewing Susan for my book, she pointed out there's a little difference. It's actually more about how one woman just becomes very interested in the way another woman chooses to live her life. It's not jealousy, it's not envy, it's just curiosity. And I think that's a really interesting way to watch the film. And the men in the film, by the way, are just eye candy. They're there for a few, and that's so refreshing because usually it's the opposite. If you're going to talk about anything about this film that really jumps out, it's the cast. I mean, this is like IMDb exploded, right? Everyone's in this. Starting with Madonna, who Susan said that she always wanted to cast her because Madonna was someone, she was one of her neighbors, imagine having Madonna like walking down the street in the 80s. And so she said she'd been in the same room with her a lot. She knew what she was all about. She just felt like she had that vibe. She actually saw Madonna perform at the Palladium for Keith Haring's birthday, which, by the way, there's a clip of that in that exhibition I talked about. So she was really gung-ho about Madonna. The studio, not so much. I mean, Madonna hadn't really acted. But they didn't give her a lot of pushback because even though it was a studio film, it had such a low budget. Susan told me that their reaction was, look at her. And I have to believe that part of the reason they didn't push too hard is that she already had Rosanna Arquette, who was, out of everyone in the film, already an A-list kind of up-and-coming star. I mean, she'd been in Baby It's You, she was in Executioner Song, Martin Scorsese hired her for After Hours. So that really made them feel like, whoever else is in this, we've got Rosanna Arquette. Little did they know. Everyone else she hired went on to bigger and better things, too. We've got Laurie Metcalf making her film debut, stealing it, basically stealing the movie. So now she's an Oscar nominee. We have John Turturro, Giancarlo Esposito, Annie Golden, who's on Broadway right now, Richard Hell, Aidan Quinn, the list goes on, Robert Joy. So there's all these incredible people in this film. Anne Magnuson. We also have to talk about the fact that there's a lot of interesting rejects. Because there was such great talent that she picked, that the second tier was also interesting. Other people who could have played Susan included Alan Arkin, Laura Singer, Melanie Griffith, Jennifer Jason Leigh. When Susan was supposed to be sort of a hippie, aging hippie, Goldie Hawn, Diane Keaton was actually talked about. Even Barbara Streisand was mentioned, which is mind-blowing to think about. But a little more concretely, we had a Jimmy, a second-place Jimmy, who went to all the callbacks and almost made it. And that Jimmy was Bruce Willis. So Bruce Willis didn't get the part, but he ended up being the bartender at the rap party. That was his consolation. So he was so disgusted, he quit New York and moved to LA and got hired to be moonlighting. So Susan said a couple years later when she ran into him, she was nervous to see him and she thought he'd say something snarky, but he just said, "Thank you. Thank you for not casting me in this film." Susan told me she has a lot of interesting little doodads around the house that are not, I don't know if she's preserving them correctly, because one of them is a video of Madonna and Bruce Willis making out, because Madonna made out with everyone that she was auditioning with. I wasn't able to see that, but she did show me some of the others, which included Madonna reading against other Gary Glasses, including Bruce Davison, another future Oscar nominee. So I put that in the book. But just a lot of great people were on the cusp of being in this film, as well as the people who were in it. But I think if you talk about the cast, you have to talk about the greatest cast member who's uncredited, and that's the city of New York. Exactly. The plot was something that was so close to Susan Seidelman's heart, because she'd grown up in the Philly suburbs, and she was always looking across at the big city, and she did eventually move to New York City. So she identified with it, and she wanted to make New York a person. And I think you'll see that once I say that, you'll see that. She decided to shoot everything location, location, location. So because of that, she was not trying to make a sociological document, but we ended up with one. Because you see St. Mark's Place, you see Chinatown, the Audubon Ballroom where Malcolm X was shot, that doesn't really exist in the same format anymore. Great scenes inside of there. And best of all, we get to see inside Danceteria. Does anyone remember Danceteria? So Danceteria was the #1 disco in the city at the time, and you could have found Madonna dancing the night away there at any given moment. And she talks about it. Madonna has talked about Danceteria often, about how she would show up with her cassette and try to get DJ Mark Canyons to play it. She actually just told this story on Fallon recently. And she said on Fallon, when he finally agreed to play it, everybody got up and danced, and that meant everything to me. And at this point, 40 years into it, to see her say that and to be genuinely thrilled by it is so interesting. But it's a very ephemeral story, that kind of story. And a lot of stories of New York, you just have to kind of picture it. But we don't have to just picture it because of Susan Seidelman. Because she shot Madonna in her natural habitat, dancing at Danceteria with real club kids as extras to her own song, Into the Groove. And Into the Groove actually came into the film in a sort of similar way to the story about how Madonna runs around with her cassettes. She had a cassette. She had just made the song. She brought it into the producers and said, "This might work. What do you think?" They said, "Yeah, we love this." So once the film was shot, they had to get permission. So they went to Madonna's manager, Freddie DeMann, and he said, "What's this? I've never heard of it." So they went to Warner Brothers, and Jeff Ayeroff said, "Why don't you use Holiday? That's already a hit." And they said, "No, we like this song." He said, "Why don't you use Material Girl? That's going to be a hit. No one's heard it yet." He said, "No, we like this song." So because the producers and the director stuck to their guns, they ended up with a #1 international dance hit in their little movie that could be snipped out neatly and put on MTV and just give them free publicity over and over. So that's kind of like how I think a lot of things went with this film. Everything was organic, but everything was just lucky and falling into place because everyone was doing what they loved, doing what they wanted to do, and it was just coming through and making it a better film because of that. And I did want to say about Into the Groove, Madonna has a very famous long-term publicist who's no longer with her, Liz Rosenberg, and she told me that Into the Groove being in this movie is important because Into the Groove, in case you didn't know, is the national anthem. And I don't think she's wrong about that. But the other fortuitous thing that happened really is just the hiring of Madonna, because when she was hired, she was this little disco dolly with no real acting experience. In fact, the first day of shooting, Andy Schwartz, who did the stills for the film, vividly remembers as a kid saying, "Is that Cyndi Lauper?" In the middle of the shoot, Madonna went and rolled around on the MTV Video Music Awards stage to Like a Virgin and made history and became a household name. So by the end of the shoot, she was, just absolutely, there was a scrum of people on her at all times. And they had to have a lot more security. And they had to rush release this film that no one was really paying attention to. Because they figured, will Madonna be famous in 37 weeks, let alone 37 years? So they rush released it, and just like everything else, it all fell together. It launched the catchphrase, if you're desperately seeking anything, you always think of this movie. It's eminently quotable. There's a million quotes that I expect everybody to shout out as we're watching. It launched a musical. There was a very campy, amazing stage musical based on this with the songs of Blondie, which you need to look into. And best of all, not only was it a box office smash, people forget that Desperately Seeking Susan was a critical hit. It was such a hit that the New York Times picked it as one of the top 10 films of 1985. And even more incredibly, not that she doesn't deserve it, Rosanna Arquette won a British Oscar for this. No shit. It was for supporting, which is another conversation we need to have, but she won it. It was still a British Oscar. And I guess that's what I would just say. That's kind of like in wrapping up, what I would say about this film is that, one more point I want to make with Susan Seidelman. Because the film is so iconic and it is so something that we all know, we grew up with and we love, she's been approached many times to make a sequel. And it's not as crazy as it sounds. She actually directed the pilot for Sex and the City. It was directed by Susan Seidelman. So she had a lot of opinions that she was sharing about and Just Like That. So I asked her, like, well, would you ever do an And Just Like That with Desperately Seeking Susan? And she said, well, it would be really difficult because, you'd have to be all about social media, and do I really want to know what they're doing at 65? She said, you know what I think? I think some things are best left in the past. And I think that's a great point. I think it is best to leave perfection alone, especially something that is both rooted in the past and yet timelessly entertaining like this film. And in conclusion, I have to say, if this film doesn't do it for you, then I suggest you take a Valium like a normal person.